Well, hello, lovely soul, and welcome to my insights. Thanks for joining us. My name's Jennifer, and I'm a psychic medium. These insights that I share come through from my spirit guides, or they come through me from my spirit guides, always with the aim of providing you with knowledge, strategies, and clarity for your life. Today, I've actually been guided to share a few personal details and personal experiences that I've had regarding trauma, all with the hope of letting you see that there may be some other ways that you might be able to manage this for yourself. So let's get into it. So I really wanted to share with you first and foremost what I'd actually learned about trauma, particularly through the past 12 to 18 months of my life. And I wanted to share with you how I actually have dealt with this to date. Obviously, trauma is something that can be ongoing, but we all go through it at some level at some point in our lives. And it depends how we actually navigate this, or how we almost transmute this feeling, this emotion that we actually have, this experience that we have, how we actually transmute that into something else. It's kind of like alchemy, how we take one set of circumstances and actually start to dissect it and view it as something different. Hopefully by the end of this particular podcast, you're in a space where you've got some more tools or some more insights around your own trauma and how you might be able to manage that. Also note that, when we're talking about trauma, if you need to speak with somebody, do reach out. There are different people in community that can be of service to you. So make sure that you've got those go-to places if you actually need to. But hopefully there's some insight in here that's going to help you as well. Trauma and grief have such a sneaky way of creeping up on us sometimes, and often when we least expect it. We talked about this in the last podcast of letting trauma go. But this is really, for me, where it actually started, or the past 12 to 18 months in particular, where I've really felt a lot of stuff come up in my life. Doesn't mean that I've never felt trauma before. It's just that, when we get into it, you're going to understand that there's been a lot over the past 12 to 18 months. And for me, even though a lot of this was unexpected, for me, it's about managing the trauma when we first experience it, but also engaging strategies for when it actually sneaks up on you. But also strategies to use afterwards, after you've actually been through that. There are no rules with this. It's really up to the individual soul on how you actually process what you're experiencing. But again, hopefully some of these steps will actually help. But I want to really dive into, first and foremost, some of the trauma that I've personally experienced. Not often that I share really personal stories, but I think that this is quite relevant. And my guides have certainly moved me towards this to share this information with you. I think if anything, it helps people to understand that we're all going through similar things, or we're all going through our own stuff. So I'd like to share with you some of these traumatic experiences. This is literally in the past 12 to 18 months of my life. I've probably got some more to add in here as well at this point. But what most people would actually experience over a number of years, myself and my family have actually managed to experience these things in 1 year, the last 12 months. So here's my chock full list of all of the different experiences and traumatic experiences that we've had. So we farewelled my sister's best mate, her awesome 16-year-old dog, Indy. So literally he'd been one of our fur babies for 16 years, and we farewelled him. Our stepfather passed away. My mother had been with my stepfather for 34 years, and he passed away. We nearly lost our mother after this to a really bad case of pneumonia that the doctors couldn't quite pinpoint. So she was in and out of hospital for several weeks. We really seriously thought that we nearly lost her straight after our stepfather. It was just horrendous. We packed up and moved my sister's house so that she moved in with my mum, so that my mum had somebody to be with her in her time of grief and while she was still on the mend and getting better. My older sister, who lives in Bali, had emergency surgery for an implant removal. And if that was left any longer, it could have actually ended her life with sepsis. So they caught that just in the, literally in the nick of time to get her into a better space and to heal. My father, who raised me, was diagnosed with cancer and had chemotherapy as well as other complications with that as well. And then he actually collapsed in his home and he nearly passed away. I just want to remind you, this is all within a 12-month period. So it's just, and this is in order. This is like one after the other. So stepfather passes, my mother nearly dies, my older sister nearly passes, then my dad's diagnosed with cancer, then he has a collapse, so he nearly dies. My younger sister and I actually went down to my father's place and we actually had to clear 32 tons of garbage from his home. This took us 3 weeks to do, and probably one of the most traumatic experiences that I've had in my life. I can manage death because I'm a medium, so I talk with people that have transitioned. The soul is eternal. But to actually have to manage that level of stress and questioning what, why, how, and to actually be moving stuff was just horrendous. Throughout that 3 weeks where I was clearing all of that garbage from our childhood home, I was then hospitalised with influenza A and an acute respiratory infection with pharyngitis. A lot of that for me was brought on by a lot of the dust, let's call it that, in my father's place. So I was then hospitalised. And my sister, in between all of this, so my younger sister and I, between all of this, actually managed our jobs. So we both managed our work, and we each sold a house. So we both sold houses. It was just weird. It was such a weird period of time. And just, when we talk about all this stuff, my father is still having treatment for cancer today. My younger sister now lives with my mother. They bought a house together. So that was another thing that we can add to the list. So I moved my sister again in this period of time. And I've just been given notice to move out of a rental property that I'm in. So I'm in the process of packing. So it's just been an incredibly traumatic 12 to 18 months. I think reading it off the list like that is a real, it just provides me with further awareness to allow myself to be sometimes, and just to go, yeah, that's a lot. That is a lot in a 12 to 18 month period. So I'm pretty sure that so much summarizes most of the big life-changing experiences that we've been through. Like I said, it's a lot to process. Not all of these experiences have to be traumatic for each of us. Everybody manages things in different ways. But when you have one after the other of these really big life-changing experiences, you don't actually have time to process one experience before the next one hits. I kind of liken it to being in the ocean and you see a wave coming, so you hold your breath and you duck under the wave. But when you surface, you're then faced with a whole nother set of waves. There's no time to completely catch your breath, and it leaves you feeling completely exhausted and completely gasping for air. I certainly have felt like that throughout the past 18 months, where it's just been one thing after another. I guess at some point I may have felt desensitized, but at the same time to the whole set of experiences. But at the same time, I know that I was processing, I was meditating, I was deep thinking, I was taking time out for myself, I was eating well to make sure that I was okay, because that was super important to me as well. But these things that are unexpected, big life-changing experiences, just going through somebody passing is a huge experience. Moving house once is a massive experience. Having loved ones in hospital and really close to their transition, or close to being at the end of their life, being near death, as some people would say, really challenging. So to have all of these things come on one after the other, after the other, after the other, I don't know about you, but you may identify with that. It's just been full on. I have to remember sometimes that things don't happen to us, they happen for us. But was I gasping for air? Was I still in those waves? I could have easily sat back and gone, wow, what's next? Come on, bring it on. I'm ready. But I never do those sorts of things. I just kind of look at where things are at and just manage what I can. That comes back to Steve Covey, author, writer of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who says, control what you can, don't control what you can't. And I've really lived by that. But when you've got all of these different traumas that are just coming at you, big life-changing experiences, one after the other, you're not able to process your emotions sometimes, and being unable to process your emotions before the next traumatic experience happens, and you're not even knowing that it's going to, this can actually lead to really overwhelming emotions. It can lead to breakdowns, mental breakdowns. It can lead to illness in your own body. It can create PTSD, and a hell of a lot more ailments and illnesses and things that are out there. You just feel like you can't come up for air and find yourself sometimes bottling up the emotions or soldiering on, as they say, or alternatively just shutting down and not wanting to do anything. All of this is completely normal. We're human beings. We get to experience life. One thing is really for certain, and that is that these experiences definitely bring about change in our lives. I've certainly found that. And something that I've learned is that change isn't about what happens to us on the outside in our lives. Change is about how we respond to it. And change always brings personal growth, soul expansion. I talk a lot about soul expansion because, we talk about death and taxes, two surest things on the face of the planet. But I also think that that could read change, death, taxes, and change. Because if we didn't change, then we wouldn't be having multiple experiences. We wouldn't be expanding our soul, which is our purpose on life or in life, in human form. But we wouldn't be having those experiences. And so I'm thankful that we do go through change, but it's really about how we respond to these changes. And you can either come at it kicking and screaming, or you can actually go with it. And I'm sort of more in the boat of go with it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So some of you may have heard me use one of my favourite lines, do you want it to be hard or easy? Because we always have choice on how we process and react to different situations. And that actually, does really matter. If you think about it being hard, it will be. Thinking about things being really hard to get through or hard to move through, all of that becomes resistance. You're not actually going through growth or change. You become stagnant. You're sort of resisting it. And that can keep you in really low-level vibrations. But if you think it's going to be easy, then it will be. We're not talking about simple. I'm not talking about fun. These traumatic experiences are none of those things. But if I came at these things thinking that it was going to be really tough and really hard to get through, then I would have been even more exhausted. I would have bottled up more emotion. And I chose not to do that. I thought that, let's make this as easy as possible. What do I need to do to look after me? And then what do I need to do to get through each one of these experiences? And how to manage. Sometimes we're still not even out of the woods with Dad. So it's about how to manage this as we move forward. So it's all about how we respond to these traumatic experiences. There are times when we'll experience things that are hard and traumatic and it won't feel easy. And I really mean that. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean feeling joy in the face of trauma. And again, repeating that information because I want to be really clear on that. Easy means doing the best that you can to process the experience. Let me repeat that. Choosing for a traumatic experience for you to be able to manage that as easily as possible for yourself means doing the best that you can to process the experience. Easy means not fighting or resisting the experience. Easy is allowing yourself to move through your own emotions at your own pace and doing what you can. Nobody can ever dictate this to you. This is your choice. This is your experience. These are your emotions. You do have control over your emotions. Nobody else can control those. You do have control over your thoughts. Nobody else can control those. But at the end of the day, we are humans. We are having emotional experiences. And it is, choosing for these traumatic experiences that we go through, choosing for them to feel easier for you. Again, it's allowing yourself to move through your own emotions at your own pace and doing what you can. I've already said, it's... I always like to acknowledge that Source, God, the universe, however you want to coin the phrase of collective consciousness or higher powers, we're never ever given any experiences in this life that we're not able to handle. And that's really true. And, we may not be able to control them. Control is a very different thing, but we will be able to manage. So my message here is be really gentle on yourself and those around you as well when going through traumatic experiences. It's really interesting because that was one of the things that my younger sister and I did. We would check in with each other, sometimes on the hour, just check in with each other to see how each of us was. And, do you need a hand at the moment? Do you need space? Do you need me to hold space for you at the moment? Just acknowledging the grief that both of us were going through, the stress that both of us were going through together, and just what we could actually do for each other. And we just managed it the best way that we can. We certainly didn't explode at each other. There was no point in that. We both understood that. So we just really held space for each other and allowed each other to be gentle with ourselves, which was really helpful for all of the different experiences that we've been through in the past 12 to 18 months. So moving around and navigating these experiences, how do we know when we're actually experiencing trauma? I mean, I've just thrown out some of the biggest ones that I could think of. But what I've learned is that it's really important to listen to yourself and understand your own emotions and any states that you feel yourself being in. Signs of trauma can include, also not limited to, these are just a few that we've pulled out, can include the following symptoms. You might feel like you are in a state of shock or denial or disbelief. You might be feeling confused. You might have difficulty concentrating. You might feel emotions of anger or irritability. You might be in or having mood swings. You might feel anxiety or fear, guilt, shame. You can even have self-blame. You might find yourself in a state of withdrawing from others, feeling sad or hopeless, feeling disconnected from other people, even feeling numb, having really strong feelings of disempowerment, of grief and despair. All of these feelings and states are what I would consider to be a lower vibration, low vibrational emotions or low states on our emotional scale. So if you understand anything about what Abraham Hicks talk about, you can research them. Abraham Hicks, so Esther Hicks brings through, she's a trans medium who brings through a collective soul group called Abraham. And they often talk about the emotional scale and, the different vibrations that we get into, which is why I use that terminology. It's just energy. So all of these traumatic feelings that we can get into, the shock, denial, anger, anxiety, guilt, shame, blame, disempowerment, grief, despair, all of these are low energy vibrations or states. So we can refer to them rather than vibrators, so low energy vibrations or energies. What we also know is that when we're in these low energies, this is where we can actually feel physical pain. We can become ill and we can attract even more low energy to us. And that can feel even worse. And sometimes the best thing to do, it's to lie down and go to sleep. It's okay to feel these lower vibrations, this lower energy. We're human. And at the part of the day, this is our soul experience, our soul being in human form. This is part of the experience that we want to go through. Without emotions and without having those experiences, well, we may as well not be in physical form because emotions are very much a part of the physical body. The secret to all of this is to experience these emotions, but not stay in them for long periods of time. It's when we tend to stay in states or feelings of disempowerment, of grief and despair, of anger, guilt or shame, when we stay in these really low energy emotions, this is where we can get really sick. This is where we're not moving through or looking for new things in our lives. So the key is to experience them, acknowledge them, and then try not to stay in those low energies for long periods of time. There are lots of other emotions to experience, but even boredom is better than anger. So it's moving through the emotional scale. But what happens when it's just one wave of trauma after another, after another, after another, and you actually don't have time to catch your breath? And that's certainly what I experienced, what I have experienced in the past 12 to 18 months. So I've listed, with the help of my guides, we've actually gone through and made a list of 6 key things that can really help you with this. So the following points are how I maintained being a high functioning human. Well, maybe I wasn't. Maybe if people were talking with me, I wasn't really high functioning, but I felt like I still was. So the following points are how I managed being a high functioning, in inverted commas, human whilst experiencing the last 12 months of low vibration for myself, low energy. There were 6 things that I knew I needed to feel, that I needed to experience for myself in order to move through all of these different experiences that I was having, just so that I could still breathe. Hopefully some of these might resonate with you or work for you. So let's go through each of them. So the first one is being grounded. Now, being grounded is super important. So whether practicing grounding and connecting within my body or physically standing on the earth's surface, which can definitely ground you, grounding was one of the most important practices for me to have. Still is today. Grounding is something that I do every day because I'm certainly not in a space where I want any spirit to just drop in on me anytime. So I certainly protect my energy that way. But I needed to be so grounded that nothing could sway me. Being grounded meant that it didn't matter what else was thrown at me. I remained resilient and connected into Mother Earth energy. Yes. Even in hospital, I was grounded. Mother Earth provides us with everything we need. If we're experiencing trauma, connect with Mother Earth energy. Get barefoot on the ground. Connect in with the earth. Go for a walk. Hug a tree. Put your feet in the ocean. Alternatively, if these things aren't available to you, which they could be, and we're talking barefoot when you are treading out to ground yourself, not with shoes on. But if none of these things work for you, or if you don't or have the capacity to do that, you can actually practice grounding through creative visualization techniques. Again, if you want to reference that, you can sign up for my newsletter. I do have a grounding and connecting and protecting sound file that you can actually go through and listen to. But grounding was one of the most important things for me. It connected me into, as I said, Mother Earth energy, and it just meant that I felt supported by the earth. I felt like there was nothing that I couldn't manage that came my way. And it just reminded me that I wasn't on my own. I was connected in to Mother Earth energy. So being grounded is something that can really help. The other thing that grounding really does is it can protect you. So grounding and protecting can actually make sure that you are not picking up other people's energy. So this is about protection for yourself, like wearing a suit of armor or a cloak, to really prevent any more coming through from other people. Everybody's going to have their own reactions, their own perceptions of what you're experiencing, particularly if you are opening up and sharing with other people, which I would encourage. I think it's important to share what people or what you're actually going through. But it's one of those things that, you know, when somebody just looks at you and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." I mean, enormous compassion, but sometimes you just don't want to hear that. It's like, yeah, it's a lot. You know, there's a lot that we've been through, and, you know, thank you for the acknowledgement with that. But I just didn't want to take on, that can trigger somebody else. You know, if you're talking about grief or the loss of a partner or the loss of a family member, that can trigger somebody else as well. And so if you're not protected, grounded and protected, you could pick up their sympathy or pick up their emotion. I'm certainly not wanting to do that while I'm going through so much. So one of the techniques that I definitely used throughout this period of time, and still do today, is to really ground myself, make sure that I was in a good space. The second point that we wanted to bring to light was know that you are whole. Really remind yourself that you're not broken. You are whole. Mind, body, soul, and emotions. Trauma does not happen to you. It happens for you because Source, the universe, God, knows that you can manage this experience or any experience and grow. You'll have something to take away from it. Sometimes these experiences are also not about you. Sometimes they're about the people around you. I've certainly had that in my life as well, that the experience actually wasn't about me, it was about somebody else. So come from a place of knowing that you are whole. That's really important. We're not broken. We can be tired. We can be exhausted, you know, but we're not broken. We're still whole. We're still intact. We're not broken. acknowledge that you are experiencing these low vibrational emotions and that it's okay because you're not broken. You're just experiencing the emotions. And while you're in this physical world, you will always be whole. You're always going to be mind, body, soul, and emotions. You're always human. Even in expressing low vibrational emotions of grief and disempowerment, I knew that I was whole. It was a knowingness. I knew I wasn't broken. I knew I was completely exhausted and wrung out, and I knew that I was going through grief. I knew that I was going through despair and disempowerment, but I also absolutely knew that I was whole. The other thing whole reminded me of was eating whole foods. So I digress a little bit from the emotions to just talk about that. I consistently reminded myself to eat well so that I still had energy to manage what was going on around me. That became really important to me. Even at times I didn't feel hungry, I still prepared a meal and ate something because I knew that no food means no energy to keep going. Don't get me wrong, I still ate comfort food. That was still on the cards. But just eating something was better than having nothing. I didn't tell myself off for eating comfort food. I allowed myself to do that, but I wasn't gorging out on comfort food either. I knew that I was still eating some whole foods, and I was absolutely drinking a lot of water. That was something super important to me as well. So keeping caffeines to a minimum because I was already high strung, but drinking plenty of water certainly helped. So remember to eat well. Is the other point. So even if you don't feel like it, it fuels your body with energy so you can keep going. Feeling whole also enabled me to just listen when other people needed to vent, express, or share. Remember, I was talking about holding space for my sister and for other people. And so feeling whole and knowing that I was whole just enabled me to listen when other people needed me to hold space for them. When you feel whole, you don't feel the need to respond to other people's emotions or take other people's emotions on board. Even though you might be experiencing emotions of grief yourself, knowing that you are whole helps you to become more aware of other people. And, you'll actually discover that you're able to listen to them and allow them to express. I like to call it holding space. So it just allows you to hold space for them without reacting to their emotions and without taking those on board as well. So feeling whole, it's almost like, when you're grounded, which is point number one, and knowingness that I was whole, it just felt like if I was a tree, I had really deep roots in the ground. So I was just able to, process what was going on, but also hold space for other people. Point number 3, stay connected. Be connected. This was really an interesting one for me to focus on throughout each of the experiences that I've had. I really felt like I needed to be connected. And for me, this actually meant connecting into spirit guides, to source energy, universal energy, and other people's energy as well. So I'm able to gain insight and provide them with support. So being connected really is a natural state for me to be in at all times. So I felt like I did need to be connected, and, being in with people and making sure I was connecting into that universal energy so that I could be the best version of myself to support other people. Very different to holding space. But gee, was I was so wrong with this one. During each of these experiences, I discovered for myself that I actually wasn't able to spiritually or energetically connect in as well as I wanted to with family in these situations. It was just every single time I tried ground and protect, I knew that I was whole, but every time I tried to settle my mind and get into a space of connecting into source energy and my guides to support family, it just felt really foreign. It was really hard. I just felt like I couldn't connect in as much as I needed to. I really feel like that was my guides protecting me upon reflection. My guides protecting me as I was able to, just be with me, because this was stuff that I was experiencing, or trauma that I was going through. So I just needed to, it's almost like having a cloak or a blanket put over me to protect myself. So my guide's actually saying, no, you're not going to connect in and look at the world the way that you normally do. We're going to bring this close and keep you close with self so that you can hold space for others. It was really different. So, you know, as an example, during my time with my father in Sydney, there was no way I could have provided my reading services or healing services at all. It felt as though, as I said, a thick cloak had been placed over me for my own protection, really conserving my energy. And I look back on that and just go, wow, that was pretty profound. Being connected is really all about, as point number 3, is really being connected with other people in the now. It's about having clear communication and lots of it. So not bottling things up, it's holding space, it's listening, and it's being open with your communication and lots of it. Keep connections with other people active when you're going through trauma. Don't just shut it down. You do need time for yourself, but it's really super important to keep your connections with people active and also allow other people to help. This was a big one for me. I'm so used to not asking for help. I'm so used to doing everything on my own. I'm very capable. And so it was really foreign for me to keep communication open and to share what was going on, but also to ask for help where I needed it. And I really learned how to do this better throughout these experiences. You know, albeit I was 51 at the time and just learning how to ask for help. It's funny how life throws things at us to challenge us or to teach us. Being connected is also about sharing detail. So sharing information about how you're feeling and how you're coping. People want to know. And it's okay to share that information when people ask and be honest about it. If you're not coping, say you're not coping. Don't just feed them information that you think that they want to hear. You know, it's really important that you share the truth around how you feel, how you're really feeling and how you're coping, because then other people can step in and help if they feel like they can. Being connected is absolutely a vital part of being able to manage trauma. Whilst going through my experiences, communication was absolute key for us, whether it was minute by minute conversations with my sister or communicating my feelings with other people. I had to learn to open up and trust that I was not on my own and that I have an amazing network of close friends around me who really wanted to support me and to help. And I just think that's so... I think the acknowledgement of that is really overwhelming in itself. I think that humanity really step into their best version of self when they do want to reach out and help other people. So being connected, super important. So no, could not connect in with my guides in the way that I normally would as a psychic medium, but it was definitely about connecting with other people and allowing myself to share what I was experiencing and what I was actually going through. So make sure you stay connected. Point number 4, productivity. Yeah, this is, you know, I'm like the Energizer Bunny from heck. Like I just keep going. There's always something that I'm working on or something that I'm doing. But it's throughout trauma, it's super important to be productive throughout these experiences. And sometimes just for the sake of being busy and having a purpose, important, you know. I certainly needed to feel like I was doing something. And again, that really wasn't a hard reach. There was plenty to do in each one of those experiences that I outlined at the beginning. But I did have to get clear on what actions had to be taken, as well as having a list of actions that I could draw on so I wasn't left feeling idle. It was just super important to me. I just needed to not just keep moving. They needed to be really key actions. Like it couldn't be like, oh, we'll just sit there and do some crochet. That's an action. No. It wasn't like that. It was like having purpose. You know, being productive was about having purpose throughout these experiences while I was trying to manage my own emotions. So being productive was super helpful for me as well. I had to get clear on what actions needed to be taken. And I also needed that list of actions that I could actually draw on so I wasn't left feeling idle. I learned really quickly to write the list, talk with people, strategize, come up with a plan. I had to prioritize. And then I had to have the ability to be flexible so that I could easily move with any changes. So it was really important not just to be productive and to have the list and to do all these things and to know the strategies and to communicate with other people. It was also super important to be flexible, because if I became rigid and said, no, this is what needs to happen in this order, now I'm in resistance and now I'm making it hard for myself. So it was super important for me to be flexible and easily move with any changes. I also learned how to not see only one way of doing things. That was really interesting to me as well, because sometimes, we can be black and white with stuff, but everything throughout these experiences needed to be discussed with other people at some level and agreed upon. And that was the only way we were going to work together as a team to get through some of the stuff that we had to do. There are always several ways of going about things, whether you like that or not. There are always several ways of going about it. And some of my productivity had strong purpose, but other times it was just about keeping me busy. But I really needed to make sure that I was engaging other people in what needed to be done so that I had new ideas around that as well and didn't get stuck in my thinking. So what we can do with this to be productive, make a list of basic activities that you can do that will keep you feeling productive. And that can just be on a notepad, in your phone. You can just put some stuff in there, type it away. Being productive can be as simple as making a meal, which we talked about earlier, having a coffee, making a single phone call, having a shower, or even going for a walk or making your bed. It can be as big as how to pack up a house or how to organize a function. So it can be any of those things, but, put as much as you can on the list, not to make yourself feel overwhelmed, but it's to make yourself feel as though you have purpose and that you are being productive. Also, one of the things that was important in writing stuff down and being productive, it was to make sure that I put some points in there to have downtime for myself as part of my productive strategy, even if it just was to stop. I mean, there were often times where my sister and I would look at each other and say, let's just down tools and let's just stop and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Or let's just go and do what we refer to as standing on the earth, the dirty 30. So standing on the earth barefoot to reset and ground our energy again. So that might be helpful for you even when you're in productivity or production mode. You might even consider TV time. Sleep is super important when you're going through these experiences as well. Downtime can often be just as productive as taking action. Sometimes the work is in doing nothing. And if you feel as though you need to sleep, then that's what you need to do. If you feel like you need to zone out and watch TV, maybe that's what you need to do. Yeah, sometimes the brain just needs to be turned off. So make sure that your downtime is added in as part of that productivity, because when you're good, it makes everything a lot easier. And that brings us to point number 5, which is purposeful. So we need to know we have a purpose throughout traumatic experiences. So productivity gave me purpose, but I needed to have the list. But purposeful, this is why we have the action plan and the strategies. Being productive, it's more important because you can look at this list and work out the purpose, the why it's being done or why it's needed to be done. Purposeful also means taking action that means something to you. So it's not, or it means something to somebody else. So it's not just going through the motions. Yeah. And it's really important that you understand that purposeful, it's got to be with intent. So in the action list that you've got together, or the productivity, you can actually have things like, downtime for myself, I've got to put the garbage out, I've got to pack a box, or I've got to do this, or that has to happen, or this has to happen. So that's your action list. But now we want to look at things that are purposeful. Yeah. Throughout my experiences, I became engaged in the process of looking at end results, what outcome I wanted from each situation. So when we talk about having in the action plan, let's down tools and regroup, re-strategize where we're actually at. The intention or the purpose behind that was allow us to ground and to just hold space for each other. So it needed to be purposeful, what I wanted from each outcome or each situation. It's all well and good to go, well, you know what, I'm just going to get on and I'm just going to, make dinner like nothing's actually happened. Well, there's no intent with that. But if you're saying, look, I'm just going to go and make a meal, we need to eat, we need to have energy, now it's got purpose. So it's really about, being purposeful. It's actually about having that purpose. It's really important to be clear about the purpose in a positive way, not negative. When I went to my father's place, which is in Sydney, so when I went to my father's place in Sydney, it really tested me on this one. And, I kept asking myself the question, this is the rubbish that we were moving out of his home. Why is it me that has to do this? What did I do wrong to deserve this? And my brain just kept wandering into it. And I kept this in check by thinking about being purposeful. So I kept thinking about the why I was doing this and about the end results rather than thinking about me personally. So I kind of went bigger with it. And it wasn't easy, I can assure you of that, when there were so many heightened emotions throughout that experience and with anything that we go through. But however, whatever we were going through at the time, I really kept bringing my focus back into the task at hand. But when I found myself going down the why is this happening to me, poor me, victim mode, I brought it back into a higher level. So why am I doing this? What are the end results going to be? And just to let you know, one of those end results was once my sister and I'd moved a lot of the rubbish out of my father's home or out of our childhood home, he was able to come back home, which is where he wanted to be. So that was the end result of that. The last thing that you do want in these situations, as I said before, is to feel like a victim. We all go through these hard life experiences, and being in victim mentality really impacts purpose in a negative way. When coming from a victim mentality, we've actually got a tendency to blame other people and react to small things that irritate us. It's kind of like having an itch that gets bigger. This attitude can also prevent us from feeling purposeful. And again, we're never given anything we cannot manage. It's how we respond to these situations that truly matters. I tell you, for me personally, it was way more effective to focus on ways that I could feel like I was being of purpose, or had purpose and was actually adding value. So being purposeful was really important, or something that really helped. Point number 6, something that I always talk about, self-love. Can I say that loud enough? Self-love, unconditional self-love. We can all find the practice of self-love hard enough during usual day-to-day life. So during times of trauma, self-love can be something that's not thought about at all. We tend to leave it on the back burner. Everything else is going on around us like a hurricane, and it's like the last thing we're thinking of. Let me tell you, or remind you, self-love is of vital importance during times of trauma. It helps us to center, it helps us to balance and connect with our soul, our higher self. So again, I've written a book around self-love, and all of the activities that are in it's called Self-Love Check-In. The activities that are in my self-love book were one of the ways that I personally managed self-love throughout all of these experiences. My sister and I did these activities every day during each of these experiences. You may have heard me say I never ask anyone to do anything that I'm not prepared to do myself. The book was actually written based on experience. It was based around clients that I've seen, strategies that I know have worked over the years. So putting that book together and then actually turning around and using it was really empowering. So I knew that the activities in my book were tried and tested, and so once again, I employed them to help me manage my own self-love and pull through these experiences feeling grounded and whole. So that's a part of self-love. So making sure that, you are looking after yourself as well. And again, one of the big points, eating well. It's funny how food keeps coming up, but we need food to fuel our bodies. So eating well was also about self-love for me during all of these. And sleeping. So we made sure that we slept at really appropriate hours. We didn't stay up too late. Throughout all of these, we made sure we got plenty of sleep. That didn't, for us, involve sleeping in, funnily enough. I'm just reflecting on that now. We were pretty much up early throughout all of these experiences. We were up early and, but going to bed at a reasonable time so that we still had a decent amount of sleep. I think there were a couple of days where we napped throughout the day. We were just so exhausted. A couple of times where we probably napped throughout the day, but other times where we just made sure that we got a decent night's sleep. So sleeping's really important when we're going through these experiences. It gives our body an opportunity to reset. So it helps us to reset. It helps your body to relax. And of course, when our bodies are relaxed and we've calmed our mind, the body can heal. And so when you're in a space of relaxation and you're allowing your body to heal, you're then able to get up and face everything the next day, and follow through with action plans again. So I use my 10-point, I've got a 10-point relaxation method that I use as well to relax my body. Again, you can find that on my website. The other strategy I used on a daily basis was to write down lists of other activities that needed to be actioned. So dumping this detail on a page. So, we talked about previously going through and making the list or being productive with where it was at, sometimes your brain can race away with you. And so when I found my brain just in a space of going, wow, there's so much to get through, there's so much to get done, I'd literally sit there with pen and paper and I would just bang out anything that was going through my brain. I would just dump it on the page in front of me because then I knew it was there. So dumping this detail on the page allowed what was whirring through my brain to be pulled out of my head and put onto paper. This actually really helped me sleep better, and I was able to turn my brain off at night because I wasn't just churning through everything again. I've used that practice for so long in my life to just make sure that, what I want to do or what's going through my brain is just dumped on a page somewhere. That became second nature to me. So if you've not done that before, if you do struggle to sleep at night, then writing down some of the stuff that's going through your brain just in bullet point. Like, I'm not talking about chapter and verse here. I have bullet point stuff. Got to put the bin out. Got to remember this. Got to send that letter off. Got to get this done. Got to do that. All of that stuff that goes through your brain when your head hits the pillow, we want all of that pulled out and just put on a page, because now it's captured in writing and you can refer to it. So your brain doesn't have to hold on to it. The final point of self-love is the art of allowing. This was super important as well. So I needed to allow myself to cry. I needed to allow myself to feel anger, to really feel sadness and to feel grief. And even throughout all the trauma, I needed to allow myself to laugh. There were times that, I remember my sister and I looking at each other and we were laughing. Then we kind of looked at each other and went, is that okay that we're laughing? We were not bipolar. It was just the fact that there were funny moments. And just allowing yourself to do that throughout times of trauma. Sometimes humor can be one of the best antidotes, but just allowing yourself to laugh. It's okay, Tuning into your feelings, really identifying with what you're feeling, really enables you to express and express how you're feeling, but you're also not keeping everything bottled up inside you. Self-love is super important during these trying times. So these are the 6 points that we've actually gone through. So remain grounded, know that you're whole, stay connected with people, communication is key. Be productive, so plan strategies to keep you busy, write lists and communicate with other people what actions need to be taken, plan for the personal downtime. Be purposeful, so be focused on tasks that provide purpose, be clear with intended outcomes, and stay out of victim mentality. That's not going to help. It's just going to make everything a lot harder. And, blaming others also doesn't provide you with purpose. So focus your energy on outcomes and what you can do. And self-loving, really engage in activities that result in self-love. I mean, there's so much crap that you need to go through sometimes when you're having traumatic experiences. And it just might be as simple as when you're standing in the shower, just allowing the water to wash over you and to just cleanse your whole body and to cleanse your energy of the negativity that's there. And just know that in that moment, you are loving self. In that moment, of making the cup of coffee or the cup of tea is loving self. And the other thing too is notice that I've not mentioned alcohol, funnily enough. Some people deal with trauma through consuming alcohol or other drugs or illicit drugs. We just didn't. I don't drink anyway. My sister and the rest of my family can have a couple of drinks. We're not big into drinking. But I've also found that in times of high trauma, alcohol can really desensitize you to a point where you're just not acknowledging your emotions or your feelings at all. And we can stay stuck for a lot longer. So I just don't, not going to sit in judgment of anybody who wants to do that. But I would temper what you actually do consume. And just make sure that you're doing have other activities that feel like self-love to you. Again, maybe what I've substituted that for was food, because I talked a lot about that as we actually moved through. So it's super important, as we go through all of this, to be gentle on yourself, be gentle on people around you. And it's just remembering or reminding yourself that, make any of these experiences easy for yourself. Allow yourself to move through your own emotions at your own pace and doing what you can. I hope that you found these insights helpful. And if you need to reach out, do reach out, and we will talk with you soon.